Well, I am super, super excited to chat with a lady who is huge actually on YouTube and in her field. She's very much loved and very popular. In fact, I asked my subscribers, I said, who do you think I'm interviewing? I'm interviewing someone who's, on YouTube and who's an astrologer. And actually, I had someone successfully guess that it was you, Pam. So that was Lindy who guessed. Well done, Lindy. I
Oh,
said bingo when she got the
thank
right
you,
name.
Lindy.
Good job, Lindy. So I'm going to be chatting to you today about a little bit about your background. And I think that inspires people when they hear other people's journeys and their stories. And particularly now, as you have such an amazing platform from which you can impact so many people. And that's, such a gift that you actually earn through your soul standing. I think it's not just this lifetime, but it's many lifetimes you've accumulated that ability. And I will also say that there's a word that I attach to women, and it's been actually a word that has been misunderstood or misinterpreted. But the true meaning of crone is an elderly female who has great experience, wisdom, and knowledge. And it's actually a great compliment to be in the true terminology considered that crone energy. It's like a sage, that crone sage energy where they have accumulated knowledge in their field and they're sharing it with others. And so, I really think that that's a great word when you use the proper meaning of what it means for what you're bringing to the world. So welcome, Pam. Thank you so much for joining me. And
Thank you.
I'd really love to hear a little bit about, your journey and what inspired you to work in the field of astrology.
Yes. It all began really after university. I emigrated to Canada, $100 in my pocket, and off I went. And the first week I was there, it was obviously a massive time of personal growth for me because not only was I emigrating, very different geography, but I was in Toronto. But the first week I joined a yoga class, and there was a big chap from Jamaica there. And at the end of the class, as you know, yoga classes are silent, but at the end of the class, one of the girls said, that chap's an astrologer. So I went up to him and said, look, I know nothing about this, but I'd love you to do my chart. And I saw him the following weekend and spent 7 hours with him. And I remember it like it was yesterday in his tiny, tiny flat in Toronto. The world just cracked open. I just couldn't believe the amount of knowledge he had, and he could pinpoint dates in my past, etc. And this was many, many years ago. So he made a tape, he made a recording of our session, and through various flat moves, I lost the tape. And eventually, I decided after 5 years of severe winters to return to England. And I was packing boxes and I found the tape. And on the tape, he was saying September the 4th, 1979 will be a major turning point in your life. And that day was September the 4th. And I was packing up to leave Canada forever. And he said in November of that year, you'll be on one of the major highs of your life. And in November of that year, I was sitting at 19,000 feet in the Himalayas. So it was a very literal high. So from
Yes.
that point on, I really thought, gosh, there really is something in this funny old subject called astrology. So I was self-taught while I was in Canada, but when I got back to England, I joined the Faculty of Astrological Studies in London, and they are an excellent, very traditional, very thorough teaching organisation. So I was working full-time, but I studied with them for 8 years to get my diploma, and then went on to do a master's course. But actually, I'm still learning every day.
Yes.
You never ever stop learning with astrology. It's just so vast. It's
And
just
does
so
it
vast.
change a lot? The information that comes in, does it change all the time as there's more information that comes through?
Yes, absolutely, and particularly at the moment, because new discoveries are being made. For instance, what's fascinating me is the new discoveries in the Kuiper Belt, which is way beyond. It's this belt of dwarf planets and orbiting bodies beyond the orbit of Pluto, and they have a very different quality that they're bringing in. But it also says that we are ready to integrate that new level of consciousness. So that is very exciting. That the planets that we've been working with traditionally, I almost think of more personality based, whereas where we're going with the Kuiper Belt objects are definitely new consciousness, and that they have a totally different feel to them, much more luminous, I would say.
Beautiful. So when you found out you met that man and you had that sort of epiphany with the astrology information, did you realize that that was your soul mission at that moment? I always remember there was a young girl in my class at school in grade 4, and I said to her, I said, what do you want to do when you got older? And she said, I want to draw maps. And then I met her many years later, and she was actually the cartographer for Lonely Planet books. And I thought that was incredible. Brilliant. Spot on.
Brilliant.
So did you know that was your, your what you're bringing to the world, that was your soul mission, part of your soul mission?
No, I didn't know it was my soul mission, but I was gripped. I was just absolutely gripped by that experience, and I couldn't put it down from that point on. So, literally from that day of meeting that chap, I've not stopped learning. And so even though I was working very hard in the corporate world for 35 years, every weekend, every evening, I was studying astrology and working with it. So it became apparent over the years, or it has become apparent, that this is not the first time I've done this.
Yes.
There've been past lives, some of which I know in quite a lot of detail, about working as an astrologer. And I think this lifetime is partly about taking that work further forwards. That's emerged quite recently, that I'm on a whole new episode of taking work forwards from the past. That is very exciting.
Fantastic. How much did it contribute to your own self-awareness of who you truly are, of being able to connect to your own authentic self and be able to utilize the astrology to really get inside yourself and know who you are?
Massive. I mean, I haven't even got vocabulary for it. I don't know who I would have been and what my life would have been without astrology. It has added immense richness, meaning, depth, self-understanding, the ability to help a lot of other people. We've all, done things in the past that were kind of no-brainers for us. Many of us went into the corporate world because, if you went to university, that's kind of what you did. But that's like just a hollow shell for so many reasons. And the depth that astrology gives me and continues to give me in bigger ways now, it isn't that I'm just going around the same old cycles. It's opening up in a kind of a vast expansion that even I didn't expect. But in terms of self-awareness, self-understanding, and enriching my life and enabling me to help many other people, it's just unparalleled. I mean, it has just been a miracle for me. But I do understand, as I say, the dance goes on. It's a continuation of work that I've done in the past. So yes, I do feel I'm in service at the moment.
And I always think too that when people have a big platform and they have a lot to give in the world, often they've been through a lot in their journey, to get there. And so how much of the adverse circumstances that potentially you've been through in your life contributed to the journey to who you are now?
A lot. I mentioned to you yesterday that wisdom doesn't come with ease. Wisdom comes with challenge.
Yes.
And yes, I mean, I don't normally talk about these things publicly, but it was a highly dysfunctional and very scary childhood, and that was sort of carried over into a pretty scary marriage, which impacted my health very, very severely. It's only really been in the last 4 or 5 years that I've managed to radically turn my health around. But the challenges were great, and they were very extensive. And without astrology, I'm not sure where I would be right now. But the other thing those challenges taught me is simple, practical ways of sustaining myself. And
Right.
that's what I try and help other people, like, closing your eyes, dropping into your breath, being out in nature, staring into a flower, hugging a tree, hugging a pet. It's terribly, terribly simple things
Yeah.
that really got me through in times of adversity when I didn't have any other resources.
Sure.
Um, to support me. There was nowhere else to go and no one else to go to in those extended times. So I had to fall back on myself, and that I think has developed a great deal of strength and self-sufficiency in myself. But it's also developed some very simple tips and methods of getting through difficult times. Yeah.
That's brilliant. There's so many people at the minute, that are experiencing, challenges on their journey, adverse sort of situations, because we are going through this enormous transition on the planet, and so it's really calling us to upgrade ourselves on so many levels and bringing up so much for so many people. So that's the reason I brought that up, because it just sort of shows through your own journey how much the adversity has actually carved or polished the diamond, so to speak, to make you who you are now. And so they're, words of encouragement for people out there that are having those challenges, because without those that resistance to push against, we wouldn't make the sort of the growth, the spiritual growth forward that we're making. So both individually and collectively, I think.
Yeah, and so yes, thank you for that, Medyhne, because occasionally on YouTube comments people say, "Oh, well, obviously, it's so easy for you. You're born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You live in a privileged situation." I think you have no idea. So,
It's
but that's
actually opposite usually with people such as yourself. It's
yeah.
actually been the opposite to get where they are in terms of their soul, their ability to touch others. They've been through so much, so they have those gifts to give others of learning and knowledge.
And also, I think if you're in a lifetime where it's fairly easy and comfortable, and you have a lot of love around you, you don't go digging so deeply. You
Mm,
don't go on those deeper pathways. You don't need to.
mm.
Challenge makes you take solo journeys, the road less traveled, and dig much deeper in order to sustain yourself. And so that's part of the wisdom too, I think.
Definitely, definitely. So now I'd like to get onto the topic of what you think is happening in terms of astrology at the moment on the planet, and where you see we are at the minute, as reflected in the cosmos around us, and then also perhaps potentially some positive developments that are happening at the moment on the planet. There's so much fear porn out there, and disinformation about the potential downfall of the earth and humanity, that we want. I really like to try and steer everything in a direction where people can focus on the positives, and that the fact that this transition is an opportunity in really positive ways for us to evolve collectively. So what do you think you're seeing at the moment in terms of astrology that would be of interest to people listening?
Yes, it's very much a time of the demolition of the old order.
Yeah.
The old systems, the old world, the old order, and that's very much signaled by Pluto moving through Capricorn. Because what Pluto does as it moves through any sign is intensify the symbolism of that sign, but also reveal any corruption within it that is not for our highest good, reveal
Yes.
any lack of transparency, integrity. So Pluto is really top-down, vertical top-down structures, governments, corporations, institutions that have been foundational in our lives, but are perhaps not operating for our highest good. So Pluto is moving through about those last 3 degrees now of Capricorn. So it is really digging up, excavating anything that it has not yet found, to release it, to reveal it and release it.
How much of that process have we gone through, Pam? Is it toward the end of that process of digging it all up? It feels
Yeah.
like it is.
It absolutely, yeah, because it's, it's only got 3 degrees, and indeed, it starts to move into Aquarius in March next year. And it kind of hovers over end of Capricorn, beginning of Aquarius, end of Capricorn, beginning of Aquarius, until December 24, when it fully moves into Aquarius until 2044. So for 20 years from that point. And that is a very different quality of energy, because that's much more grassroots up, local communities, people's councils, assemblies. And that movement is already happening, because we've also had Jupiter moving through Aquarius and Saturn moving through, still in Aquarius, until March next year. As Saturn moves out, Pluto moves in. And so Aquarius has a very different kind of social structure that it supports. So we're really in the end days, if you like, of Pluto moving through Capricorn. I think the very, very intense phase at the 3D level is what we're going into right now.
Yes. And I think that's reflected in us needing to really surrender and let go of anything that no longer serves us, that's not for our highest good, which is in alignment with, what you're saying about Pluto. Individually, we need to look in our lives at what it is that we're holding on to, which is really not serving us. And sometimes we love, as human beings, to be in our status quo. We like what's familiar. We don't like to step into new territory. So this is really a time to be able to face fears in that way, and to be able to just release anything that we've been holding on to that is old energy.
Yes, and I would say this in all my videos, really. As far as you are able, unplug from 3D life. As far as you are able. For instance, personally, I haven't watched mainstream news in the last 2.5 years. The only time I catch it is when I'm paying for petrol at my local garage and the radio's on, and I think, how did I listen to that? I used to listen to that every day. And it's a measure of how far I've come, but it's a shock. It's a shock, and I can also feel the hollowness. So, step back from mainstream media, because that's very much part of the whole 3D thing, as we know. As far as you are able, just unplug from any 3D external input, because it's full of really big, scary things. Now, the really big, scary thing, little green men arriving over there, just put spiritual blinkers on and say, no, I am locked on to love. I am locked on to love as my destination. And I'm not going to deviate. That is where I'm headed. And do not be distracted, because when we're pulled with fear, not only does that scatter our energy and we start to lose our power, we give our power away to the people or the circumstances that are engendering that fear. But we lose focus to where we're really going. And what we're actually doing is quantum entangling with what we don't want.
Yes.
And so it is really, we've got to become such masters, particularly in the coming months. It's going to get pretty wild in the next few months. In lots of ways that are very obvious right now, in terms of, there's a very off-on energy. Well, one of the big things that I talk about in the videos is coming. In fact, I said way back in January, we're coming to a crescendo at the end of this year. The last few months, we're coming to a crescendo. And I had that in my themes for 22 in January. And I'm still sticking to that, because that's what we're now entering. And one of the big aspects we have is Saturn square Pluto, which we had all through last year. And it's coming back into like a pincer movement, coming back exactly to the degree at the end of this month and beginning of next. And just kind of shorthand that Saturn is the past, Saturn is the way we've always done things, Saturn is government, Saturn is rules and regulations, Saturn is for your safety, you've got to comply, it's centralized everything. Whereas Uranus said, not a hope, I want freedom, I'm a maverick, I'll invent my own rules, I'm not going to comply and obey the rules. Also, Uranus is the planet of the future. So ultimately, in these battles, Uranus will always win, but not without the challenge. Uranus is connected to higher mind, to the galactics. We're going to be having a lot more information about galactic beings and the fact that we are galactic beings, actually, and that's where we've come from. We're going to have a lot more about sort of air travel and all of that moving forwards. But anyway, so the big clash is this control freedom piece, control freedom, individual versus the state, if you like. And that's coming back to a crescendo right now, really, absolutely right now, and will run through the autumn.
Kerry Cassidy talks about the rebel gene, which is that sort of energy of the Uranus you're talking about. And how much do you think that humanity is really stepping into that energy of, you know, individualized thought, and thought that is not based on you know, control programs and perhaps frequencies that are being fed to us and things like that? How much do you think we're successful at the moment when you look at the astrology as a planet, of being able to think for ourselves now and be able to be in that sort of rebel energy?
I think it's growing. I think it's growing because, as I say, ultimately Uranus will always win, and particularly because Pluto is moving into Aquarius, ruled by Uranus. And Pluto will intensify the Aquarian energy and therefore essentially the Uranian energy.
Right. Right.
And that is beginning in March, but we're already feeling it. So already it's like a huge fork in the road, Medyhne. And so people essentially have broadly made a choice which way they're going. But increasingly, because of the challenges coming at us, whether they're, you know, energy prices or food shortages or all that kind of thing, increasingly people are saying, do you know, this just doesn't feel right. You know, this just doesn't feel right. So increasingly there is a shift to more independent thinking, I think. And that, you know, I think we're already, frankly, beyond the tipping point, and the eclipses are going to increase those feelings. In fact, it's very interesting. Just before we hopped on today, I was looking at the chart for Australia, which is set for the 1st of January 1901, 1325 local time, Melbourne. And in that, the moon, which is the people, is at 20 of Taurus. Now, the total lunar eclipse on the 8th of November, which is the midterm election date, so not sure that's going to be...
Coincidence.
Yes, how smoothly that's going to go. It's going to be conjunct that moon. So this is going to ignite the people with Uranian energy in Australia, I would suggest. So you've had a very, I know, I'm aware, obviously, you've had a very tough time, but you've also had transiting Pluto, the planet of power and control, moving all over the midheaven of that chart, Australia, which is the government, leadership and government. So it's been excessively, you know, tight, top-down control, but that has now moved on. That has now moved on. So particularly that total lunar eclipse in November, 8th of November, and we'll feel the energy always with big eclipses like that a month before, up to 6 months later. But it will, I believe, activate that moon, which represents the people. It's a lot around resources and land, Taurus, food supplies, all of that kind of thing. And food is so fundamental to us all, isn't it? So, you know, if we're in a situation where we're back to root chakra issues, eventually people become stirred. And but all of this is necessary. It's not comfortable, it's not easy, but it's like, I've used this analogy before. It's, if you want to put a new kitchen in, you have to smash out your old kitchen cupboards before you can put the new ones in. You can't just fit the new ones on top. So it's a mess and it's noisy and the place is covered in dust and it's very uncomfortable and you can't make a cup of tea. And but we have to go through that process of the demolition of the old in order to get to the new, and almost the deeper the demolition of the old, the greater the blossoming, the birthing and the blossoming of the new.
Absolutely. I think the financial system is such a big thing where so many people are having challenges there with the finances, and the bills are getting bigger and that sort of thing. But when you think about it, you know, if you're breaking down a system with a dark system, you don't want to have them flourishing in money either. You know, that for them to not be able to access money is part of the process of being able to break down the system. So that sort of generally means nobody is having a lot of access to it at the minute, because, you know what I'm saying? That means that then they're not able to access it to be able to continue doing what they're doing. it's like the whole system has to break down for them as well as us, and obviously it's going to impact us through that process. But it's sort of, I don't know what other way it can be done. So I think people just need to find that inner resilience and be able to find ways that they can navigate through these types of things and challenges at this time. How do you see the financial situation going?
I think it will be very turbulent, and I think there will be radical, radical change. Uranus moving through Taurus. Uranus is sudden, radical shifts and change, and Taurus is banking, business, stock markets, wealth, currencies, all of that. So I think there are going to be some shocks to the system over these next few months. And certainly we are moving towards digitization, because Uranus rules the internet and anything digital. So that's the direction of travel. The key thing then becomes, is it centralized Saturn or decentralized Uranus? Because cryptocurrencies were really birthed from the idea of decentralization, but now I understand every government central bank is ready to launch a digital currency. And so we have to be very aware of of how we move through that. But essentially the 3D challenges will bring people together. There's a very strong urge for collaboration and community.
Yes.
People want to come together. And it's interesting with lockdown, when many of us were so separated with no human contact, that's it's catapulted back into, I really, really find human contact precious, really precious.
Yes.
So people are coming together in all kinds of groups, assemblies, councils, and just really wanting to share, wanting to buy land, to grow food, wanting to share. There's a whole global movement in that at the moment, and that's going to accelerate even more.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting in that way. So if you can put your focus on that, finding a like-minded group of people online, or even better in person in your local geography, who are coming together to really change the world from grassroots. I mean, we've got a wonderful initiative in the UK right now called the People's Health Alliance, because all through the pandemic, our health service, the National Health Service, which we've all loved dearly, historically, has just not been able to cope. So it's absolutely creaking, and people can't get appointments with doctors, and they couldn't get their treatment, and blah 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 blah. So people are aware it's on, it's extremely stressed as a state health service right now. So this wonderful lady, Catherine McBean, had the idea of starting up the People's Health Alliance, which is essentially a concept of local health hubs, of people organizing themselves locally. Maybe doctors and nurses from allopathic tradition join them, maybe healers, therapists of all kinds join them. They may find a building, a barn, and they set up a local health hub. And the PHA centrally will issue a kind of a sort of template, organizing template, if you like, to give them ideas of how they can structure this financially, practically. But they're just exploding now all over the world. They've only been going, I think, 3 months. Fantastic. And they have just exploded because there's such a need, again, for local healthcare.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's really identifying where the demand is in your community and in society for services and for things that have a new energy that's more sort of advanced and more progressive, but it can replace the systems that were no longer functioning. So it's being able to really see, well, there's a group of aged care people in our community, and they're not having they don't have all the services, or perhaps they don't have the socialization that they need. So maybe it's bringing young people over to the home, so that they can have that interaction with young people and that they've been missing, or just identifying specific things and ways that we can work with the new earth that we're going into.
Yeah, and that's what's so exciting. And I have a sense, Medyhne, it's a very, very strong sense, and you may have it too, and I know many people do, that somehow something quite radical is going to happen. And I don't know what because astrology never knows the event. You know, we can just see the quality of energy and the timing. But there's almost a sense that there's going to be some kind of jump or radical earth change, or because of the, you know, the brilliant photonic light coming in that's upgrading us, there's going to be something that creates quite a radical change or shift in circumstance as we move through these next few months. So next few months, tough at the 3D level, but keep your vision higher than that. Keep on your eagle's perch, keep in a state of divine neutrality. So if you do have to interact with 3D in any way, try and keep this kind of neutral observer position, mentally, spiritually, because do not engage in fear, because that does all kinds of things to our physiology and our timelines and, you know, the whole thing that we're aware of. So really try and stay in that neutral state as the observer, flying above it all, almost. Absolutely. Is the feeling to have as far as you are able.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I haven't even been to a supermarket for the last 2.5 years. I get my organic food delivered every week. So I haven't even been to a shop in 2.5 years.
Wow. So this is a new way of functioning in the world that you've found that aligns with your energy. Brilliant. Yeah. I want to mention, on the topic of communities, I have a wonderful online Patreon community with like-minded people, and I share some fantastic information and resources. So if anyone's interested, I've got the link below. But yeah, that's great. You know, we're sharing herbal remedies and all sorts of things that, you know, are going to be beneficial, you know, going into the new energies. So Pam, what do you think is going to happen in terms of that particular event? Do you have an intuition about it? You know, some people say it's the solar flash, then other people might say it's an event where our ET family come down and you know, make first contact, or you know, there could be, I mean, there's so many things it could be, but do you have an intuition on that at all?
My only feeling is it's something to do with the light.
Yes.
Because the light that we are going through right now in the particular area of space we're going through is extraordinary. Yes. In terms of upgrading us. So the only sense is it's something to do with the light, which has not only got a highly upgrading quality for every cell in our body and reactivating our DNA, it's got a very, very cleansing and purifying process as well. So that's my only instinct. Yes, I do think that galactic beings are around helping us. I mean, many people channel them, don't they? And I think that will become increasingly common. Yeah. And because we are made of stardust ourselves, you know, we are part of that family, actually. We've just been so programmed to be disconnected from them. So I have no doubt that we are getting support, because Earth, as I understand it, has a very pivotal position in the galaxy. So that's why we need to succeed in this upgrade, and we will. I mean, yes. I have no doubt that we will. But that's why there's such interest, I think, from other beings in the galaxy. That's my sense. What do you think, Medyhne?
Oh, yes. Well, I agree that we have an enormous amounts of help. I mean, I just have to look up to the clouds during the day. I see all these sort of like spaceships behind clouds and that are cloaked and things like this. So, you know, that's really obvious. It's really evident. And, you know, there's more and more sightings as well, if you want to look for that sort of proof. And I do think that they're wanting to help us as much as possible at this time. But as much as we, through our free will, we're allowing them to come forward and help us within the, you know, parameters of what they're allowed to do according to. They don't want to sort of take over our free will and sort of intrude in any way. So they're mindful of that, obviously. And also I do think that our energies have to be at a certain level of evolution and frequency in order for them to be fully able to, you know, come and say hi and present themselves. Because if we're too low, we could go into, you know, fear or shock or whatever, and not be able to deal with the energies, or they'll bring up the things within us that are hidden, that are perhaps our shadow aspect, because they'll have so much light and there's so much more evolved. So it's going to just it's like when you stand under a spotlight and then everything shines and the darkness is illuminated, you know. So we need to be able to be really at a stage where we're able to deal with it and handle it. And I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm just putting the invitation out there. I mean, I've had a few things happen already in that area, which have been really great. So I'm looking forward to our family reunions there, because they are family reunions. We have so much of that DNA within us. I think it's 22 strands in our DNA of galactic energy, so, or galactic DNA. So you know, wow, it is part of who we are anyway. In terms of the solar flash, it's hard to say, isn't it? Because, you know, we've never been through this process before with the transition of the Earth into a, you know, fifth dimensional reality, or, you know, what we call the golden age, or, you know, the Aquarian age. We've never done that as a planet with humanity on board. So we don't have something that we can compare and say, well, this is how it happened last time, because it's sort of all very new. And so it's very difficult to say specifically. We can only just go with our inner guidance and our inner intuition. And I agree with you that there is a continual raising in the light, in the feeling of the light, in the energy of the light, and the feelings within us. Like, so there's like a buoyancy or a bubbling of joy that's raising up more and more, which is attached to the light. The more the light comes down, the more we can connect to that buoyancy and that sort of that joy. And I do know that when I was young and I was clear in my energy, I would feel these amazing, really powerful, joyful moments in my life. And I'm feeling it starting to, you know, reactivate now more and more. And I think it's all, you know, we're being so assisted by our galactic family, but also that the light that's coming down is really allowing us to connect to feeling happier and happier and better if we don't tap into all the 3D stuff that's coming up to be transmuted, because it has to be seen in order to be released. So we have to see all the darkness before we can let it go. And it's also part of humanity's learning, that they have to know what's happened to a degree before we can move forward. You can't just sort of let all that stuff go and then we're ignorant and, you know, clueless about what's been going on. We need to be able to see it and know, in order to really advance and to learn from that, so that we don't follow that same path again.
Absolutely. You know, because we won't make a big enough change unless we've seen that.
Yes.
So it's essential. It's really essential. So we know that. So, you know, if we're so blessed to have this foreknowledge that astrology can give us as well as your gifts, Medyhne. So in knowing that prepares us and say, okay, you know, it's going to be a bit lumpy and rocky, but I'm looking beyond that to where we're going to see a lot more green shoots of new Earth, I believe, from about spring next year.
And what will you be doing, Pam, in the new energies of the new Earth? How do you think you'll be bringing your gifts into the world?
Well,
apart from what you're already doing.
Yeah, you know, certainly it'll be astrological. That, you know, my desire, this is a very odd thing, but my desire is to go kind of almost beyond the astrology towards Kuiper belt objects, towards things like state of being, energy, frequency, because we've had historically such a sense of fatedness with the current planets I work with, the bread and butter planets. You know, what are the planets doing to me today? And we've got to get beyond that. So certainly I'll be involved in some way, astrologically or energy wise, in my work. I'm already very blessed to be in a big Stand in the Park group, which, as you know, began in Australia as a global movement. And we are just creating all kinds of amazing new initiatives within that group. Some very gifted people, very talented people. We're developing our own People's Health Alliance within that group. So that really feels like a family of frequency for the future. And this is the group with which I'll be moving forwards into that future. So whether we're able to buy some land ourselves and actually live in community, you know, this is where we're starting to look now. So it's super exciting because it's such a different vision, and it just feels so wonderful to be in a group of like-minded people that
Yes.
I've never actually experienced that before.
Right.
You know, because so often many of us, like little separate dots of light, have lived in areas where we're surrounded by people who are following a different narrative.
Yes. Yes,
Um,
absolutely. And now we're all joining together and
yeah,
connecting, which is feels so fabulous. The same thing's happening for me. And, you know, for many years of my life, it felt like a very lone journey, didn't it? Yeah.
very, very.
Solitude.
But it's not, and this is again the Aquarian energy, people finding each other on the same
Mm.
frequency. And often in the same geography, and this is where it can really have power, because it's easier to be strong if you're in a whole group of people being strong. And there's such a sense of excitement, as you say, Medyhne, with new ideas, and it's going so fast. That's the thing about air, Aquarius, it's going so quickly, developing so quickly. So, got no time to think about the old 3D, collapsing kitchen. Just focusing on where we're headed, really.
So what's a great astrological tip that you have learned through your study of astrology to be able to really navigate what we're going through at the moment? Are there any other things that you've learned through astrology, or some wisdom or knowledge about what's coming that you see in astrology that's going to be really impactful in how we go forward from this time?
Yeah, I think very much the strong Aquarian energy will be. I think we're going to make leaps and bounds of in new technologies, new healing technologies, in, as I say, aviation, space travel, all kinds of new scientific advances that
Longevity.
are going to happen. Sorry?
Longevity.
Longevity, absolutely longevity. They're going to be reverse aging technologies coming in. We're going to live a lot longer.
Yep.
This is really going beyond the astrology, but because we're moving into such an age of air signs over the next few years, not just Pluto into Aquarius, but Uranus moving into Gemini, etc., out of Earth, out of heaviness and slowness and density into something lighter. I think we are going to embody more light. I think we're going to eat less, more plant-based. We will develop much greater psychic sensitivity to be able to heal other people and really read other people's energy, so there'll be no dishonesty because you can just see it so clearly. I think we'll have a much greater sense of connection to nature and the sacred and the divine. And this is really coming into the symbolism of the Kuiper Belt objects too.
Yes.
This sense of the sacred in nature, which we've lost in modern day life, especially if we live in a city, in an apartment. We feel very separate, and nature has really been pillaged and exploited. So I think there's a whole rediscovery of ancient knowledge with
Yes.
the earth that we're going into as well. That feels very exciting.
I love that. I really love that. And it's how you perceive the world too, because when you look at the shortages in, for example, fertilizers or chemicals, another way of looking at that is that some of these things are actually quite sort of toxic and not good for us or the environment. And so now, when there is a shortage in that, is an opportunity to find new ways to do the same thing that are much more in harmony with where we want to go and the Aquarian age. So you can do that with everything. The every single thing that you look at, the things to do with the society breaking down is just really another opportunity to focus, as you say, on building community. And I think that it's really a matter of turning the perception. So when you see a negative, look at it in a different way and find the positive within that is really about creating a new earth. And I think you do that really well, Pam.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, yeah, you have that ability, that sort of natural positivity and optimism and ability to see the positive in everything that's happening.
Yeah, I really do. And I'm such a lover of nature myself. I'm sure you are, Medyhne, too. I'm such a lover that's always been my touchstone.
Yes.
That's always been what has sustained me, and I think nature could even evolve with different species.
Yes.
Even a different, I want to say, geometric underpinning that could jump an octave.
Hmm.
Um, that feels very exciting too. So, I think we have a great deal to look forward to. Just lock on to love, just lock on to that very high frequency, and that will get us through.
Fantastic. So that leads me to what you mentioned on your website, how you see the sacred geometry in astrology. How can we work with sacred geometry to move forward? Because I think that's going to be a huge thing that we are going to utilize going forward that we're not really accessing now. I mean, I think the dark have accessed it with all their, occultism and everything else. But, our ability to work with symbology and sacred geometry to go forward. How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, I think sacred places, the geometry of sacred sites,
Mm-hmm.
the energy of the land, that's going to become a much more prominent issue. People are going to become aware of the energy of the land because, as you may know, the energy of the land of the earth is changing quite radically.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because of all this cosmic energy. And so people are going to want to gather at sacred sites which have very particular geometry underpinning the land there,
Mm-hmm.
and really feel the healing from that.
Yes.
And this is happening more and more with group meditations. I mean, I follow a particular chap who holds group meditations around sort of southwest area of England. And when he started, he might have had 10 people. Now he has several hundred.
Wow.
Everybody wants to connect on that particular piece of land because of the geometry that is underpinning it. And it's quite interesting with crop circles that I'm understanding more and more about. Crop circles may actually emerge from the geometry underneath the earth
Yes.
as much as from any galactic beings. Yes.
There's so much to learn about crop circles, isn't it, that we don't really understand yet. And I wanted to mention that last night I run a soul healing group, and we did work on a part of Victoria, and we just went in and we did so much purification and cleansing, and were able to really feel an enormous shift in the energy of the land just by a group of us working online together with that healing. So if anyone is inspired by that work or feels like that they'd like to join in, please contact me, because I think you can make a big difference with that sort of work as well. We felt that there was a real density or heaviness that we were able to sort of collectively transmute and bring in a lot more light and positivity. We could all feel it. So it was beautiful. Yeah.
Fantastic. Wonderful work. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Pam, thank you so much for this chat today. It's just been a wonderful joy, and I am inspired by what you do, and I hope that you can keep in touch, and I just encourage everyone to go to Pam's site below. All the details are below, contact details. And have you got any last message? Because you've already given so many wonderful messages, but any last messages before we go?
Yeah, I think just that the message of really lock on to love as your docking station and do not deviate. That and love as a state of being. Love
Yeah.
as a state of being, and everything that you operate from in your life is underpinned by love, and that will get us to a much better place.
In truth, there is nothing else, is there?
Correct. Yeah.
All there is.
And anything I think that is not of love will fall away during this period.
Yes, fear, false evidence appearing real. Yes. Oh, well, thank you, Pam. It's such a joy to chat with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for everything you're doing for the planet and for humanity too.
Yeah, and you too, Medyhne, all of your work too. Bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lots of love. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.